Thank you, Regina, and thanks to everybody at Kellogg. Let's dive right in. Have you ever known someone who wanted more from their life at work? Maybe they wanted more recognition or rewards, or maybe they just wanted more opportunities or chances to grow and really make a difference. Well, I've known that person. I bet you have too. And I'll confess, I've actually been that person. And it's one of the reasons why I'm really passionate about unlocking some of the hidden potential that's inside us so that more of us can become that person, so that we can be the person that gets the things that we want in our work, in our careers, and along the way, serving others as well. And that's why you're here today to talk about mastering the art of bragging. Yes, I said it. I said bragging. So let's just dive right in. I really want to start with bragging on you because you've already accomplished a lot in your life, in your career. I mean, you've been part of Kellogg, you're a successful student, no one's looking at your GPA. I mean, you got through, right? You did it, you stepped in. And maybe you're a good fan, you follow sports or some of our great professors and the terrific work they're doing in the world. And now here you are. Here you are watching this webinar, and you are continuing to invest in yourself. And I've got a secret for you. Not everybody does that. It's actually a really unique and special thing. And so give yourself a pat on the back today, wherever you are. Or maybe if you're driving, listening to this, don't do that. But if you're sitting in your office or your home, give yourself a go, Cats. Congratulations for taking some time for you because it matters. So I'm really grateful that you're spending some time here with me. And so, as a thank you to you, I do have some bonus resources that you can go check out after you watch the rest of the webinar. And I'll tell you this again later on, but in case you get distracted or in case you're not stopping the video to write this down, all you need to do is pick up your mobile device and you can text the message Kellogg to the number 44222. And it'll ask you for your email, and then I will send you some additional follow-on tools that you can use after you watch the webinar today, just as another way to say thank you for investing in yourself today. Now, Regina told you a little bit about me, but, truth is, I'm probably a lot like you. I was taught to work really hard. I was also taught in my family to play really hard, to have fun and enjoy life. And those messages continued, as a kid and through graduation, and honestly, even now to today, when I live a great life, working hard, playing hard, and trying to do the things that matter to me, my family, and the world that I care about. And growing up the way I did, and the way I think many of us did, no matter where you grew up, that I was taught that you shouldn't brag. Anybody else out there taught that? Probably. It's a pretty common thought. It's pretty common even today to tell people that they shouldn't brag. In fact, brag actually is thought of as a four-letter word, even up there with some of the other four-letter words that we are not going to share on a webinar where you might have the kids in the background listening in. So why? With all of that, with as often as brag has been seen as a four-letter word, it's been seen as a bad habit, as something that we want to teach people not to do. What's changed? Why am I sitting here today teaching a webinar for you on mastering the art of bragging. Why am I an advocate? And many people are beginning to advocate for you telling your stories, mastering the art of bragging. What's changed? Here's what's changed. I am seeing a lot of red flags, and I am betting you are seeing red flags as well. These red flags look like roles being diminished to the lowest common denominator. These red flags look like industries that once were important and growing being fragmented, outsourced, changed. Promotions, advancement, recognition getting harder and harder to get in our complex companies. And one of the biggest red flags that I'm seeing driving this, and across all the companies that I work with, and many of the leaders and great people that I have the opportunity to work with, there is this trend I'm seeing of becoming a commodity, that your role, what you do, is being reduced to the lowest common denominator. Let's stop a minute and really think about what we mean by a commodity. So for years, a cup of coffee in Denver was the same as a cup of coffee in Detroit, right? It was a commodity. It was all the same. It was just like all the rest. When our roles start to become commodities, when we start to think of they're just like all the rest, this industry, this role is the same as the next person doing it, as the next person doing it, we suddenly become outsourceable, replaceable. The value of our roles goes down, and so pay goes down, compensation goes down. And if you don't believe it's going to happen to your job, to your industry, I want you to think about the friends, the family, maybe even again yourself, that have experienced that in some of these fine industries. And while each of these industries, absolutely, can you name rock stars in these industries? But in many cases, our efforts to make things more efficient, and our efforts to look at the world globally and find people who will do the repetitive tasks and the things that don't need full attention, that we can streamline, that we can outsource, that we can replace and not do it all. These roles in many of these organizations have been eliminated, deflated, commoditized. I don't want that to happen to you. The truth is that we become a commodity when we're just doing the work, right? When we're just executing. The author Seth Godin talks about that if your job can be written out step by step and repeated, then you're a commodity. Because what's keeping that job from being handed off to somebody else who might do it cheaper, or to an AI technology who can execute repetitive tasks? But I will share with you, this is not what we need in our world right now. We don't need more commodities. We don't need people who are just doing the work, just churning stuff out, just following rules, following steps. We desperately need people who are doing work that matters, who know what matters, who are choosing to do work that matters. You might be asking, so what matters? Doesn't that matter? Well, I want to challenge you to think about what matters differently. The truth is, all human beings share these things that matter. We're longing for connection, community, meaning, purpose. When we can incorporate these things, show these things in our work, we break out of the mold of being a commodity. We become somebody irreplaceable. We become somebody who is creating value at such a higher level that, of course, we're needed. Of course, we're rewarded. Of course, we have more opportunities. These are the things that matter. And I might even go so far as to say, in addition to the value of connection, community, guidance, happiness, we even need people like you bringing things like love into our workplace. Which I don't know about you, but in many of our workplaces is just another four-letter word. But it is what motivates people to what matters. It is what makes your work stand out and not be a commodity. And if you're shaking your head and saying, "Now, that sounds all nice and good, Darce, but, no one can make any money doing that. No one can be successful being about something more," then I want to introduce you to a little company that maybe you've heard of, Starbucks. It may surprise you to realize, does not sell coffee. Nope. Starbucks sells something bigger. Starbucks sells community. Starbucks sells connection. Coffee is just the way station to get there. I mean, have you ever stopped to think about it? This thing that was a commodity at one point, coffee was a commodity. But Starbucks was able to connect it to something more that matters. Why do you think that they made a choice to create these third spaces, to create these places for people to connect and talk and meet and do their good work, when it could have just been a kiosk if it was all about the coffee? Why do you think the barista writes some version of your name on the cup when they hand it to you, as opposed to give you a number? They're about something bigger. And I want to challenge you that you can be about something bigger too. But it starts with knowing how to speak up, communicate our value, to learn how to brag on the things that we do that serve the world, that are important to us. And when we do this, we can avoid being seen as a commodity. We can avoid being seen as just the same as everybody else. Wouldn't you like that in your role right now? Or if you're like some folks that I've talked to after we did the live webinar, that maybe you're thinking about what's next. Maybe you're in job search, in transition. When you're a commodity, why would someone talk to you? But when you know your value, when you're able to communicate it, when you're able to brag on yourself appropriately, tell your success stories, of course you're the person that's going to get that next job. Of course you're the person who will make a difference. So I believe that you have to learn these skills. These are not anything that any of us were taught. This is not anything that we have a lot of great role models for. You have to be the one to tell your story. And if you're in a role where you're a leader, or you have a team, or you have influence, that maybe you work in big teams, what if you're the one to be able to role model these strategies for somebody else? so that their story can be heard, that their things that they are great at you can amplify so that they don't become a commodity. They don't become reduced to the lowest common denominator. I truly believe that it is time for a revolution in our world of work. And it's not a big, loud, subversive revolution. It starts one of us at a time, one decision at a time, one story at a time. It's why I call my company Red Cape Revolution. Because you remember when you were a kid and you grabbed a towel or a sheet and you threw it around your shoulder and you felt confident, you felt in control. What if we could feel that way every single day at work? What would change in your life at work if you could have that red cape feeling all of the time? Well, I believe that we can, and I also believe that we must, because we've got a lot of problems in our world right now. Anybody see those happening? I don't know, in your company, they may have a code word for them. They may call them something like challenges, or what's the code word I'd heard yesterday? Opportunities. Let's face it, stuff's broken out there. We need you. We need the things that you do that are not just the stuff, but the things you do to create meaning, the things you do to break out of the trap of being the lowest common denominator, of being a commodity. We need you in our world of work. And so, mastering the art of bragging is a way to bring you forward, to make sure we're hearing from you, so that not only will it be helpful for your career, for your company, for your cause, but it will also be helpful for the world. So that's why I'm so passionate. I feel it's so important for us to learn and practice and keep trying these skills to master the art of bragging. So we are going to go through 5 steps that I work with my clients. I teach in groups of people, and now you get to try on for yourself. 5 steps to master the art of bragging. At the end of our time today, we also have some questions that came in through the live broadcast, and we'll answer some of those that seem to come up time and time again. If you have questions, I'll also tell you a place where you can send more questions, and we'll get them answered. So if you have some, write them down, and I'll let you know how you can get those questions to me so we can get those answered for you. Because I don't want anything to get in the way of you trying these steps to master the art of bragging. Now, before we just dive in, I'm really curious. Does any of this make you uncomfortable? If it does, raise your hand wherever you are, even if you're sitting alone. Say, yeah. If this makes you uncomfortable, I have one word for you. That word is good. Good. And this is not because I'm mean or I don't care. It's because of this one truth. Discomfort is where the growth comes from. We can't advance, we can't grow if we do not choose to make ourselves uncomfortable. And thinking about doing this, thinking about learning how to brag, putting it into place, can often make us feel very uncomfortable. But when that happens, and as you're following along with these steps, I want you just to remind yourself, yep, absolutely, I expected it to feel uncomfortable. This is new to me. This is reprogramming things that I've been taught. But that discomfort is the only way that I'm going to grow. So, with that, let's dive into the 5 steps, the 5 strategies to master the art of bragging. And the first one is to define your superpowers. Now, what do I really mean by superpowers? This word gets thrown around a lot. And you may have noticed in Regina's introduction, I wrote a book called Bring Your Superpowers to Work, Your Guide to More Clarity, Confidence, and Control. So I think a lot about your superpowers. But it wasn't always that way. When I first started working directly with clients and coaching, I really thought that success was all about making the most of your strengths, around building on your strengths. And as I was writing my book, one of the things that I started with was in the companies I was working with, I would ask people, I'd say, who's the most successful person here? And they'd give me names, and then the names that kept coming up, I would finagle my way over to an introduction to them, or, show up in their doorway or call them or email them. And I talked to a lot of people who other people said, this is the most successful person here in the organization. And I asked them, what makes you so successful? And the things that I heard surprised me, because I didn't hear, oh, I'm the best at organizational consulting, or I'm a great project manager. The strengths. What I heard were things like, well, I've built a pretty good network, and so I'm very resourceful, and when I don't know what to do, I know the place to start to go ask other questions. Or I heard things like, you know what, I'm the devil's advocate. I am always the person who's kind of looking at the other side of what can happen, so that we don't move forward without the realistic point of view. And I really thought about these things, and I realized the things that make us great are rarely on your job description. They're rarely in the definition of who you are and what you're supposed to be doing. I mean, when's the last time you saw a job description that said, has a great sense of humor, rolls with the punches, is resilient to change? But these are the things that make us different, that make us stand out, that make meaning, that make it matter. So how about you? If the first step is to define your superpowers, what's unique and special about you? What do you know is that differentiating factor? And maybe you're not sure. That's okay. Maybe it's time to start asking some of the people that you work with, some of the people around you, what is unique and special about you? And get over yourself of don't feel that it has to be this perfect thing that's a line item or something that you're ever measured on. Maybe it's the way you do something. It's the lens that you take. I had a client who was a healthcare consultant, and in the course of her career, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And she thankfully came through that whole struggle and came out a survivor and went back to work. And suddenly she realized she had an additional perspective. She had more superpowers that she had gained from going through the experience she went through. She actually could be of higher value to her clients, to her colleagues, because she could bring in that other point of view. That painful personal thing that happened to her became one of her strongest superpowers. What about you? What might be something where you use what's happened to you, the resources that are around you, the ideas you have, the way that you do things? This is a good time to get that clarity. Because when you're clear on your superpowers, clarity helps you know what to say yes to and what to say no to. Where do you feel like you're wearing your red cape? Where you're soaring, where you are just feeling like, yes, this is the type of work, this is the way that I want to work, this is the kind of experience that I want more of. I urge you to get that clarity now. On the bonus resources, I have some other tools for you that you can use if you're at a place where you're ready to get more clarity, where you're not sure. I'm happy to help you with that. The second strategy in mastering the art of bragging is to find a pride point. Now, what do I mean by a pride point? I want you to actually do this. Stop a minute, write this down, pull out your phone, open a note, go old-fashioned, get a piece of paper and a pen, and think about a time that you have felt proud in your professional life. Ideally, this is something that's within the past 12 months. And it doesn't have to be something that anybody else has seen, has noted. It doesn't have to be something someone wrote you a bonus check for. It doesn't have to be something that was in your KPIs that you rocked on. What's something you're proud of? It could be something small that nobody else has even noticed. I want you to pick something. And I want you to make sure that that something you pick, that pride point, is within your superpower space. And this is where the clarity helps. We all know how this happens, right? That you may be somebody, you're working in a team, and there's a problem, there's a project, there's something that is undone. And no one's stepping up to do it, and so you do. You step up, you make it happen, all goes great, but it's not your superpower work. It's not the best and highest use of your time, of your energy, but you do it anyway. And then what happens? Now, you know, the next time the same kind of problem comes along, they come to you. This is often, I see this in clients a lot of times, how jobs that sounded good on paper can deteriorate into jobs that aren't a fit for you anymore. Because in our goal to just try to be a good team player, we're taking on work that's not in our superpower space. So as we're thinking about mastering the art of bragging and you're picking your pride point, I want you to just bounce it up against that and say, is this something that I would want more of? Is this pride point something that reflects my superpower space? When you've got that, and of course, as we are going to create this brag story, as we're going to master the art of bragging, I just want to say it, there's no lying here. We're not stretching the truth. We're not trying to take a molehill and make it into a mountain. It all has to start with the intention of what's true, what's real. Because we often don't see that. We don't even see how the small things are important. And I'm always reminded of the quote from the baseball player Dizzy Dean, who said, "It ain't bragging if it's true. So, what is that thing you're proud of that's true about you? I had a client who was a chief marketing officer, and she had a really rough relationship with the chief financial officer. They were just kind of oil and water. And she made an intentional point to build that relationship, to smooth out that relationship, to really work on making it better. And that relationship went from bad to okay. Now, let me tell you, that's nothing that anybody is going to get a bonus check for, or even that's going to be recognized in someone's performance plan. But for her, she was proud of that because it fits in her superpower space of building relationships and helping create change. And so that's a pride point, and you can use pride points that no one else sees. So you have a pride point. It's in your superpower space. We're going to take that into the next step to mastering the art of bragging. And I call this putting the right words in your mouth. Yes, we're actually going to practice saying this, using this in real situations, being able, because, it's nice theory to think about. But if we're not actually talking to people about what we're proud of, we're not finding the ways to do that, then we're not going to be visible. We're not going to be viable. We're going to become a commodity. So, when we put the right words in our mouth, there's something surprising about what makes it right, as opposed to what feels like bragging in the old school. And I want you to listen to two different statements. So I might say, I was named to the CEO's task force. But I could say, I was so honored to be named to the CEO's task force. What's the difference in the two of those? Can you hear it? Did you hear it? Well, here's the secret. It's emotion. It's care. I was so honored is an emotion, and it's my emotion. So because it's mine, it's true, right? No one can say, oh, well, no, you're not. It's my opinion. It's my feeling. But emotion, this thing that we often try to squeeze out of the workplace totally, it is a magic wand. Emotion is what puts human beings in motion. When you can add emotion to your pride point, that pride point being something that's in your superpower space, and it's a positive emotion, it's an energetic emotion, it is something that you care about, people move forward, people lean forward. Here's just some examples of ways that you can lead in with emotion to your pride point. I was excited when I was invited to come speak to the Kellogg alumni crew here today. I was so proud to be part of my local Northwestern club being named Club of the Year a few years ago. What are those things that you can use emotion for? You can put emotion in it. When I do this in a room of people, even surprisingly enough, a room of people who already know each other, they always discover something new when you give people permission to take a pride point and express it with emotion. And let me tell you the other secret that happens when we do this. Most everybody at the beginning of an exercise like this will say something like, oh, I hate it when people brag. Oh, or they'll say, oh, no one wants to listen to me. No one wants to listen to anything about me. And then afterward, after we do speed dating rounds of just 1 minute each, where people are telling their pride points with emotion, what do we hear? Oh my gosh, I wanted to hear more. Oh my gosh, that was so interesting. Oh, that minute flew by. You know, people want to hear your success stories. They want to hear good things that are going on. They want to learn from you. They want to understand how you can serve them and the interests that they have. So give this a try. Put emotion with your pride point, and that helps you put the right words in your mouth. Okay, so obviously, though, we can't do this all the time, every day, every situation, right? We're not a robot. I was so proud that I did this. I was so happy. No, we can't do that. You've got to pick your spots. What are those places, those people who need to hear your message, what you're proud of, what your superpowers are? Maybe it's just the one-on-one you have with your boss. That instead of diving straight into the list of things that's undone, here's all the things that are problems, maybe instead you start with, I'm really proud that we got the annual report done on time and on budget. It was a great opportunity to be able to go to the conference and present our white paper on XYZ. What are those spots? We all think we have no time to. This is what I hear when a lot of people are throwing up the resistance to say, oh, well, I couldn't do this. I have no time. We all have these moments of white space. What do I mean by white space? Well, let's say you're going to a meeting and everybody's gathering. Maybe it's a virtual meeting. Maybe it's online or it's even on the phone. What typically happens in those gathering times? How are you? Fine. How are you? Fine. And then everybody goes to their emails or to their phones or have meaningless conversation about the weather or sports teams. Nothing against sports teams. Don't write me about sports teams. But is that really the most important thing we can do in that moment? Instead, what if you made a choice that for the meeting where someone who you want to see more of your superpower space, that instead of, how are you? Fine. How are you? Fine, you decided to change it to, how are you? Fine. How are you? Great. I'm so excited. We just brought the annual report in on time and under budget. What's new with you? Suddenly you've done two things. You've planted that seed of, oh, Sue's the person that does the annual report and she's on time and on budget, which doesn't happen a whole lot. You planted that seed and suddenly you have what we old timers would call a conversation. You've opened the door for someone else to say something about themselves, about what they're doing. And when you do this consistently, you also create the permission that it's okay that someone else can tell you the things that they're proud of, the things that they're excited by. Especially if you're a leader, creating those moments, using those white space moments to put more of those stories out there can be so powerful. It doesn't have to take an off-site retreat. It doesn't have to take a whole team building meeting. It takes 30 seconds at the beginning of a meeting. It could take just it being a regular agenda item that, okay, before we dive into, the to-do list for this week, just going to each take 30 seconds. Let's share one thing we're proud of this week. Go. We all have our timers with us, right? These strategies of being able to find those moments of white space, to intentionally make them, can really be helpful. And speaking of help, this is the final step to mastering the art of bragging. And it's the step that can make a huge difference for you. To be able to ask for help. None of us can do this alone. To be able to ask to somebody in the meeting that you're going to experiment with this and say, you know what, I'm trying some different techniques. And because I really want to be heard more, or I want to be more visible. Could you just kind of be my observer in the room, and then after the meeting, give me some feedback as to how it went? We can ask other people to support us and encourage them to partner with us, to buddy with us on this. Also, if you're feeling alone and feeling like you're just trying to build these things without help, don't forget, and this is not a paid announcement, this is really from my own experience, you've got a Northwestern, a Kellogg community at your fingertips. Wherever you're watching this right now, you have access to other resources. And those behind those resources are people, are human beings who, just by asking, want to help you. So don't go it alone. We all need connection. We all need people in our corner. I know my Northwestern Club has been that for me, especially when I moved to a new city. Don't hesitate to reach out and see what kind of help you can get. And my bet is you're going to give help to somebody too. So in a couple minutes, we're just going to take some questions as we start to wrap up. But so I'm going to ask Regina to share some of the questions that came up on the live broadcast. But just as a reminder that if you want to get those bonus resources, all you need to do is text the message Kellogg to the number 44222. If you're outside the U.S., unfortunately, that doesn't work, but just email me, Darcy@redcaperevolution.com. And the texting, again, it's just dial 44222, just like you're putting in your mom's number or your friend's number, and the message is Kellogg. When you hit enter, that will ask you for an email, and then I'll make sure that the bonus resources show up right in your inbox. So, Regina, let's take a pause here. I'll have a sip of water, and let's answer some questions before I have a final story, and we'll wrap up a little bit.
Okay, great. Thanks, Darcy. So during the live webinar, we had a lot of participants who described themselves as introverts. And we had a question that came up over and over again, which was, how do I make bragging work for me without turning into someone I'm not?
Right. It's been interesting in the past several years, and I have a great friend who's an author and studies introverts very closely. And one of the things that she's taught me, as well as some of the other terrific research that's gone on, is that one of the things that introverts excel at is a one-on-one relationship, is personal conversations. And the truth is, these techniques actually work best when it's one-on-one. And I want to encourage anybody who's thinking, oh, well, this won't work for me because I'm an introvert, that you actually have the skills to share and then listen and to encourage someone else. I don't want you to hide behind this label of introvert. I do think that sometimes we're using the label of introvert as preventative medicine from showing our value, from showing how great we are and the things that we can do. So by using emotion, positive emotions, as an introvert, you still want to show up with your value, show up helping people understand what you do. So I would say use the one-on-one relationships where you're great, where you're really good at listening, but also to be sharing what you're doing because someone needs to hear that from you. It might be the most helpful thing you can do for someone else is to tell them the things you're proud of and what your superpower space is.
So another question that we got a lot of had to do with social media. Specifically, how do you brag on social media without it coming across as annoying or unprofessional? Does it differ across LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter?
Right. So I often have said that I want to be in social media the way that I am in life, right? Like for those of us who've been around a long time when everybody used to read newspapers, we used to say, if that thing would show up on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, would you be proud of it? Would it be good, would it be beneficial for you? So not living two different lives. And I think sometimes social media has increasingly encouraged us to be multiple people. And I would say that, of course, you don't want to be that way. You want to be authentic and be who you are. And so using the bragging techniques, you can use them on social media in the same way that you can use them face to face. For example, you're going to pick your spots. So maybe Facebook is just for your personal brand, or maybe you're only showing up in Facebook on certain groups and you use some of the bragging techniques in certain groups to be able to help someone know who you are, what you can do, and how you can help them. LinkedIn, let's just use LinkedIn since that really is the business community, right? It's the business professional social network. I all the time will post things that would say, I'm honored to be invited to speak at XYZ company, or so proud we had a great meeting today with, and you can @tag somebody. So you can also give someone else a compliment. That said, I don't do that every single time. But the truth is that when I'm telling the truth, that I'm excited by something, that I'm proud of something, that here's something that happened, I do end up building my brand and people's awareness of things that I can do, that I am doing, and that comes back to me. People say, oh, yeah, I just saw where, you spoke at a conference. But I didn't say, hey, I'm a speaker at XYZ conference. I said, I'm so excited to be going to the IABC World Conference or what have you. So you can use it strategically, find the white space, just as you would person to person.
Okay, and I think we have time for one final question. As you know, here at Kellogg, it's a very multicultural community, and in some cultures, it feels like bragging is socially inappropriate. How do I communicate my value if I'm working in one of those cultures?
Yeah, there's actually been some really interesting research, and I will say, I do not consider myself an expert in all of the multicultural communication mores around the world. And again, our Kellogg community is so diverse. And if I would suggest too, if you're working in a country that's not your own, find somebody in the Kellogg community who is and talk through some of these issues with them. I think people can be very helpful. That said, in many of the countries I have worked in, what I find is that human beings still have a common thread of wanting to be heard, of wanting to understand what other people can do, how they do it. And I think that these techniques, especially when you put genuine, honest emotion in it, and when you pick your spots, pick your white space, don't be doing it constantly and all the time, I think they still blend in with the cultures where it might not traditionally be that someone is speaking up as much. I think when your intention is to serve, not sell, I think that even works in a U.S. culture, which someone might say is a little more, out there, let me tell you what I can do for you, a little more aggressive. But if we want to brag in ways that other people don't gag, I think we can't just say, well, it's not appropriate in my culture. Culture is just a word for how we do things here. And maybe in your organization, it's time for people to have a little more credit or a little more specificity or a little more excitement about the things that we're doing. So I would urge you, after kind of listening to the steps and the framework of putting emotion on it, that no matter what your culture, maybe there's a place where you can serve at a higher level. that if someone understood your superpowers, that if someone had an example of what you did when you're at your best and highest use, that that's not bragging in a negative sense that would be culturally inappropriate. That's actually trying to serve someone and help someone. So I appreciate the questions that came in. There's more questions that I will go in and answer. And if you have questions, again, we'll show you where to send more questions at any time that you're watching this webinar. So I would ask you to think for a minute about the next step that you're going to take. What is it? Is it getting clear on your superpowers? Is it figuring out your pride point? What is the thing that you're proud of? Or many things that you're proud of? Is it putting the right words in your mouth? But it's all nice and good to spend time here today. And if you've stayed with us this far on the webinar, you know there's something in here that's speaking to you. What's that next step? How do you put it into action? This reminds me of a story that Jeff Bezos told. And of course, unless you've been off planet for a few years, Jeff Bezos, of course, is the CEO of Amazon. And he told the story about a friend of his who wanted to do a perfect freestanding handstand. Now, why someone would want to do this, I'm not 100% sure, but this was really important to his friend. And his friend was in good shape, and she just thought just take a little bit of practice, and then, click, she'd get the perfect picture, and then she could just do it all the time. And she thought it'd be easy. She thought it just should come. It just should happen. Truth was, it was more and more like this. She fell on her face. She couldn't hold it. She just didn't work. It wasn't easy. Time and time again, she got really discouraged. And so she talked to a trainer at the gym, and she's just saying, what am I doing wrong? Why isn't this working? And the trainer said something to Bezos' friend that she shared with him. He shared with Amazonians, and I think it's so appropriate for our time here together today, and I want to share it with you. He said, if you think you're going to figure it out quickly, you're just going to end up quitting. If you think that these things sound like, yeah, I can just go do that, and then you do it, and then you trip over your tongue, or you chicken out in the white space. Yes, I see you. I know that happens. You're just going to end up quitting. You're going to throw up your hands, and you're going to say, well, that's not the golden strategy. That's not the silver bullet, the bolt of lightning. That doesn't work. No one brags. That's wrong. That's not me. But if you try it, and you practice, and you ask for help, you get feedback, you embrace the fact that discomfort is where the growth comes from, you will have the benefit of breaking out of the commodity mold, of people seeing more of who you are at your best and highest use, and you being clear, because you're being clear at the things that are your superpowers, the type of work that's in your superpower space. So it takes time. You're not going to just get it in one-hour webinar, but I hope that what we've given you today is a framework to start to experiment, to start to play, to start to put yourself out there. I don't want you to wait to tell those success stories, because we need you. We need you at your best and highest use. We need you to not be a commodity. We need you to create meaning, to create purpose, to create connection, community, even love in our world of work. We need you now more than ever. I thank you again for your time and attention. There's more information as to how you can get the bonus resources. And of course, if I can be of service to you, you can always email me here at darcy@redcaperevolution.com. So now I'm going to say thank you and turn it back to Regina.
Thank you, Darcy, for sharing your suggestions and tools on ways to find our superpowers so we can let people know who we really are. I would also like to thank Kellogg Information Systems, or KISS, for hosting this webinar. The resources that Darcy mentioned today are available to you at redcaperevolution.com. If you have any follow-up questions, you can direct them to cmc-alumni@kellogg.northwestern.edu, and we'll make sure that Darcy gets the questions. Thank you again.